Welcome to Householders, a conversation about American life as Zen practice. I'm Inga Annie Wade.
And I'm Kyosaku John Mitchell, and we're lay members of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center. We have with us Tsuki Taylor Brown, a member of our Sangha that we're very excited to talk to. Someone whose voice we hear probably next to Sensei's the most of anyone else in our Sangha, or I guess next to Sensei and each other. But in the Zendo, certainly, Tsuki's voice is very resonant and in our lives, and now we're glad to have that voice on the show. Welcome to the podcast, Tsuki.
Thank y'all. I'm excited to be here. As I was saying, I'm become quite a big fan of Householders, and I look forward to Friday mornings when it's released, and catching up. It's great, and I think it's very important to have like this sort of more casual-ish type discussion about Zen. So I'm excited.
And I'm like 99% positive that we did Yukai together.
I'm 99% positive too. Yes.
Nice. Well, we're very excited to have you as well, and looking forward to a casual conversation about Zen with you. But we would like to know, and the people would like to know, about your formal role in our Sangha, and we'll get to how you came to be in that role after that. But tell us what your role in the Sangha is and what that looks like on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe the term sensei keeps referring to me as is Ino, I-N-O. It differs from Sangha to Sangha from my understanding, but originally when I wanted to be more involved with the community, it was on a very surface level. So before Sunday mornings, I would just come in about 2 hours, 1 hour early just to make sure everything is set up correctly, clean, and all that. And that was deemed the Ino position by senseis. That's what the Ino does. They are in charge of how the space looks and operates, make sure it's nice and clean and orderly. That position kind of changes from more traditional sanghas, from my understanding. I think the Ino traditionally is somebody who is also like viewing everybody while they're sitting, and that's like a very formal position for them, is like they are making sure that everybody's on their marks and in their place. And I might be a little bit off base on that, but they definitely are the person to like monitor the room. So something around there. You can call me I suppose, but it's really just kind of a jack of all trades, a little bit of a mixed hand, because I'll do the doaning regularly, and even our doan with our song is really like three traditional positions of somebody who leads the chants, who leads the percussions, and all that. So whatever is needed that's more physical, I'm there to help for sure.
One of your most visible roles in the Zendo, other than when you're doan and leading the chanting, is serving the tea during the talk portion, and it's a hard job, I bet. How do you relate to that part of the portfolio?
To serving the tea?
Yeah.
It's interesting. A lot of how the Atlanta Soto Zen Center operates is where there is a need, fill it, contribute it, be the person to volunteer. We don't really see it as something where we volunteer other people, or if we're saying like this should happen, like this is something that a program that should happen within our Sangha. Somebody should really get onto this. Like that's not really the attitude we have here. If you want to see something happen, you do it. And so for a while there, tea was kind of an on and off thing. And right now I've been off tea considering like the current state of COVID and all that,
Yeah.
Being more precautious. But for the tea specifically, there just wasn't a particular person consistently fulfilling that role. And so I was like, well, I'll make tea. I know how I like tea, and I'll share it with everybody. So I usually do gunpowder green tea and have it going for a certain amount of time. And it's a little bit of an art form, but
Oh, absolutely. I'm very glad that you take care of that. It's the tea tradition is very special to me. I've been a tea connoisseur all my life, and I love green tea, but also that's just something that made me feel very welcome at the Zendo is getting to drink tea with everyone. And you get it's green tea, so it's not a lot of caffeine, but you get enough stimulation mixed in with all the other emotions that you're experiencing that I think it creates this like wonderful um chill but also excited mix.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's a lot of nuance to it with a lot of Zen practice in general, where every time I'll go out to serve tea, the biggest thing on my mind is, oh, let me not accidentally pour scalding hot water on people, because that's like just the whole operation.
Mhm.
That's my biggest concern. And then also, we do have a couple of members of our Sangha who are extremely caffeine sensitive or can't have caffeine.
Hmm.
And so I remember exactly who can't have caffeine. If I'll offer them water or herbal or something like that. So I think that integrates a lot with just regular Zen practices, being aware of everybody else's needs and making sure they're not scalded by hot boiling water.
Yeah. So your dharma name Suki. I know like some words in Japanese, and that one means moon, right? Or is it the same for your name?
It means moon, although I believe it's taken from the Shobogenzo chapter, which um, also has, I think, the characters divided up a certain way. So, from my understanding, with ideographs of Japan, there's moon, the very singular one ideograph, and then there's also moon that is two ideographs that means also like total function or undivided activity, I believe is the other thing. So it does literally mean moon, but I also believe it means like total function.
Interesting.
How did you come into this name and this role and this function in total function in our sangha? The way that you just described the serving tea as just as sort of a natural aspect of Zen practice, to me reflected a pretty deep relationship with Zen practice, and we like to get into how people ended up like that. So where does the journey start?
So I think I do the newcomers a lot on Wednesday nights, and that's like facilitating a class. And the first part of the class is introductions, and it's a balance between maybe like being vulnerable enough to expose yourself a little bit to start a conversation, but not getting carried away. So typically, what I tell newcomers is a little bit of a summation. I grew up in Georgia, not necessarily in the city, in a more suburban rural area, and I grew up with a very traditional Christian background. I think I identify a lot with what Inga Annie has to say with like her background, although I don't think you've divulged too much into it, at least what I've listened so far with householders, but I identify with that background.
Hmm.
And somewhere along my teenage years, I became very disenfranchised with the belief system I was raised with, and kind of almost resentful to a good degree. And so I was like an angry atheist for a while. Just disbanded everything and all of that, and really held on to that. But somewhere along the line, I think instinctually I was always attracted to Buddhism because the figures of the Buddha are very peaceful and relatively like happy. And so I think I always had the inclination to find out more about Buddhism. So a little bit going into this angry, kind of resentful period, I started just reading uh, pop pop Buddhism books, I guess you can call them. The first one being, I believe it's like The Teenager's Guide for Buddhism
Hmm.
while I was a teenager by Diana Winston. It was very on the nose. I think it's Wide Awake, A Teenager's Guide. And it changed my life.
Do you remember how that ended up on your like in your hands, where it came from?
It it was actually like a little bit of a small town secondhand bookstore. Um, Yeah, it was in like the religious section, and I would peruse, and their selection wasn't that great in general because in a secondhand bookstore you only get sort of what the community gives you, and the
Right.
community I grew up in wasn't. one predisposed to Buddhism necessarily.
Mhm.
And so I think it was the first time I had stopped by the religious section and had saw something like that. And I was a teenager at a time. I was interested in Buddhism. I literally picked it up, and the rest is sort of history. I started going to like the Emory Buddhist Club that's nearby, driving all the way out into the city of Atlanta. And then for a while, I was going to the Athens Zen group because I was around the Athens scene for a while, and eventually ended up here with the Atlanta Soto Zen Center with Hojo Sensei, who I actually first met through the Emory Buddhist Club. So
Mhm.
that was a good entry point there.
When was that? When did you meet Sensei?
This is probably about 2016,
Okay,
maybe 2017.
cool.
Was there something in that book that spoke to you at the time for you to want to go like seek out other Buddhists?
So I think what stuck with me the most was maybe this is a off caveat discussion, but at an earlier age, I had become vegetarian, which was like made me the black sheep of the family because I come from a long line of like Midwesterners, like steak and potatoes type of people.
Yeah.
And so I always kind of like stuck out like a sore thumb with the rest of my familial upbringing. And there was something about just Buddhism, like the topics and the tenets that are discussed, that brought me in. I always felt like um, I was kind of already there practicing these sort of things, or at least interested in that ideology or like the form of Buddhism. And reading that Teenager's Guide kind of just confirmed that, like, oh, these are things I generally like have already been believing in or are my values.
Hmm.
There were concepts in there that were kind of above me, like karma, and all like the great enumerations of, you have to remember the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, and a
Yeah.
lot of that went over my head as a teenager. But I think what stuck with me most was how much it kind of confirmed what I already thought about my part of the world.
Yeah. And did you feel like that since you grew up in a religious place, did you feel like you needed something else? Like, because you said that you did go from religious to atheist and then to Buddhist. So I'm wondering if there was like something missing from the atheist experience
Hmm.
that you felt like, I don't know, maybe from your upbringing that you liked about having a religion or anything like that.
I think that's you asking me that question, Inga Annie, made me remember at that period of my life that I actually inclined towards Buddhism because there is a big secular Buddhism movement. And so I think I kind of I just resonated with the more like worldly secular doctrine, if you can call
Right.
anything about Buddhism like that. And so yeah, I really got hooked, quote unquote, hooked into Buddhism because you could theoretically be non-theistic or atheistic and still a practicing Buddhist. And so that rung me in, that brought me into um, what Buddhism is in general. And then after that, I think I became more spiritual, just digging deeper into the practice. So initially, it was like, oh, I'm a secular Buddhist. I understand the principles, but anything
Mm-hmm.
supernatural or I can't see myself, that's all bunk, and I'm not super about that.
I'm interested in the movement from that to Zen, but I feel like I actually want to get to that by asking a different question, which is that it sounds like from your telling, you got to the idea that you should do this with other people pretty quickly, which I think unusually quickly, based like compared to me and to compared to other people I know, even people who have had a practice for 10 or 15 years or so. Like this is the first time I've ever really joined a sangha in the
Hmm.
last year and a half. And I mean, I've sat with other groups before, but I've never committed to any particular group of people, let alone teacher, until now. And it's you tried a couple of things. It sounds like, but I think that even just the very instinct to go from reading a book like that to being like, well, I should go find the people who are doing this, is I mean, it's the right instinct. I think it's a beautiful instinct, but I'm interested in how you figured that out, and like what it was like to kind of cross that threshold for the first time.
Yeah, I think the draw to showing up physically in person actually came from me my whole life being a bookwormy type of person and always reading books. And so, of course, when I read this teenager's guide, that wasn't the last book I wrote on Buddhism. I kept reading and reading and reading, getting in deeper. I would try, like, oh, let me read a Tibetan text, or let me read a Zen text, or Theravada and all that. And across the board, especially with Zen, in these texts, in these contemporary literatures, a point of advice is always you need to go find a teacher.
Mm.
Like, you can't get this done just by reading books.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, that imperative really stuck with me. As soon as as soon as I read that in a particular book, it may have been Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, which is one of the first Zen texts I had read. I believe Shunryu says that somewhere. It drew me towards finding a teacher, or finding some sort of community, mostly just to fill my inadequacy, because I just felt like I was inadequate if I wasn't going to some sort of physical Buddhist type of thing, just based off the text I was reading.
So so then after you started, seeing more sanghas and you became part of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center, what made you want to become a resident?
I so pretty much when I first came to Atlanta Soto Zen Center and they had mentioned something of the residency program, I knew immediately that I wanted to be a resident. Like, that was, as soon as they said that, I was like, I'm gonna do that one day. Um, Mostly because I'm drawn more towards sort of like what austerity in Buddhism is like. But at that time, when I started practicing with this Sangha, particularly, it just wasn't in my means. I was like a student over,
Mm-hmm.
40 minutes outside the city. It just wasn't possible. And so pretty much after I had gotten a degree and gotten a job closer in the city, it all kind of fell together. And I took my shot that I've always wanted to do, and that's to be a resident. So far, I've greatly enjoyed it.
And how long have you been a resident?
For a little over a year and a month. A year and a month.
Okay, so basically the pandemic. I mean,
Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
you've been a resident the entire pandemic, which I'm sure there's a different experience if you're not in a pandemic. And I do feel bad that that is the only experience you have of being a resident at the Sangha. But I mean, you at least remember what the Sangha was like before the pandemic, so you kind of have an idea of what that might be like anyway.
Oh yeah, and I think that's a good criterion before being a resident, is to know how the Sangha operates beforehand and kind of be familiar with the community, because we do have residents that um, go into the program head first and not be generally aware of how the programming works. And I think that experience um, is possibly less fruitful or more existential than somebody who goes into the residency kind of knowing what to expect.
Hmm.
And I think with the pandemic itself, it faces its own challenges with residency, very unique ones. Um, yeah, very unique ones. But over time, I've watched the kind of opening again, kind of closing back up, the expansion and the contraction and all that. And it's there's never not something to be learned from being in this Zen community. And the more time spent with it, I think leads more opportunity to have that learning experience. And I do
Hmm.
greatly appreciate the residency program for that, because it definitely lends more time to have that sort of experience.
So tell us about that line between the sort of Buddhist ideal of resident practice that I guess we would call monastic practice, and your own ideals and your own sort of desires for your own practice life, and the residency in our sangha, and sort of where those things all intersect, and what the trade-offs and advantages and disadvantages are from your point of view.
Yeah. So I am greatly fascinated with Zen coming to America. What does this look like? What's the degree of lay practice? What's the degree of monasticism or austerity? And I think with the residency program at Atlanta Soto Zen Center, it is this very interesting new, to quote a word that Sensei uses, a new frontier in the practice of Zen, is finding that balance. And for me personally, I do think, or my practice, I think, benefits from leaning into more austerity than, say, the normal prescriptive day-to-day American life, although not abandoning it. And so I think in my teenage years and early, later adolescence, I sort of idealized monasticism and going away and retreating for years on end to like fulfill the Buddhist experience and all that. And I think that in itself became quite a large attachment on my part. It became more an aversion to the world in which we live in. And I think that aversion is one of the three poisons in Buddhism. I think
Mhm.
my desire for monasticism, for leaving this world, was really an aversion to this world. And so I think my day to day existence and a few others who are in the residency program or adjacent, we like to find that balance between um, embracing this world and all its debris, all its, just day to day wear and tear, but also fully embracing to our best ability what it means to be a Zen practitioner. Just flirting with that line. It's not easy, but it is fun. It is a little bit fun. I like it.
That is so interesting. Yeah, there have been times where I've just been like, man, I'm so fed up with things. I wish I could just be a nun.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, that's probably not the reason you should be a nun. So,
Mhm.
I don't think so. Yeah, yeah. Wherever we go, our problems, our neuroses follow us, whether that's in the middle of the woods or in the middle of a major city. And I think finding out the intention of why we do things is very beneficial to our practice. And I think a lot of my desire for great monasticism again came from aversion to this real world, this world that we live in as lay practitioners in America. Um, and so with that knowledge, with that recognition that so much of the monastic ideal is from aversion, at least from my perspective or my history, it really helped me to actually come back to embrace the mundane of this world. I do appreciate and put an art form in uh, putting response emails to so and so coworker or whatever. Like it's like the tea again. Like it all has its
hmm.
little nuances, and there's every moment and chance within the mundane to be fully expressive of this human existence.
Mm.
Was there anything today that you could pinpoint that you knew it was mundane, but you felt something towards it that you don't always feel? Has there been a mundane moment today that brought you some kind of contentment?
Oh man. The convenience of a fast food burger. Uh, that might not be the just today. If I had to look at just today,
Yeah.
just today was kind of a busier day and all that, and I hadn't prepped my lunch and all that, and I felt a super like great moment. I don't want to like glorify eating a burger too much, but but it was really great. It was very tasty, and like it for me in my day to day existence, like a burger is like a nice like Friday thing or. But for a lot of people, that's just it's lunchtime, time to grab a burger.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I wanted to ask you that because today I saw a praying mantis and I
Ooh.
felt that way. I was
Whoa!
just like,
I saw one
I,
today too.
I wonder if they're just coming out of the woodwork. I
I,
don't
I
know.
I guess so, but I saw on my morning walk with the baby, I saw a bird attacking one on the sidewalk.
Oh no.
Like a little cute bird, but still like 3 times the size of a praying mantis. And the mantis was going down. It was not. I scared the bird away by walking up, like not on purpose. Like I was just walking and the bird flew away. But like I saw them going at each other before I got there. And the mantis was not looking good when that bird flew away. Maybe it is some kind of seasonal moment for them. That's really interesting. I guess that's mine. That's my moment of the Monday today.
Both of ours was a praying mantis. So.
Yeah,
They're pretty miraculous, and it's in the name. It's in the name. It was there all along.
for sure.
Yeah, they seem really wise. I always think that like if people thought fairies were real, they probably just saw a praying mantis.
I like that they're making gasho. That's my favorite thing about them.
I'm a bird person, so I like that bird had lunch. Keep on
Yeah,
going.
that was the bird's burger for sure. I want to ask about the line because we talk about it a lot here too. The line between monastic life and householder life, or monastic practice and householder practice. And you use the word line to describe it too, but you described it as something that you're playing with, that you and the residents are playing with that line, kind of weaving back and forth on either side of the line. I want to know if it feels like you're in an in-between kind of position with respect to that line, or if there's actually like a third space in the middle somewhere that's maybe a new space that's just opening up in this kind of practice that you're doing.
That's an incredible question. I can't assert that there is this new third thing in the middle that has yet to be found. I think what we do is experimenting, right? And so I think it's experimental. I don't think that I can't say that there's this third this new frontier of exactly this third position of exactly in between. I think much like just regular day-to-day existence, it is flirting with what works and what doesn't work. And I think, say, like 1 month, maybe I do participate more in the residency sort of programming, or maybe I really lean into maybe the I guess escape, but I don't want to say escape, but just like the periods of rest, the periods of darkness, the periods of yin. I think being entwined with this line, you very much see where the dark is in the light and the light is in the dark. And I think being in the space, you get to play and really lean into one or the other. And so with just my work in general, most of our works in general, we can get really caught up in like the manifest, the secular world, and some points in my life, that is what is necessary. I have to be there. I have to be fully present in that more yang sort of aspect, the more masculine sort of aspect. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think I've seen it referred to as more like an absolute samadhi. And I might be going off the deep end there, trying to quote other people at this hour. But I think there's aspects of both the retreat, the coming back to earth, the return, the motion of the Tao, return. I think there's aspects of return and then going forth into the world that are complete, that are whole, and that line is really, with residency especially, that line is being able to and being afforded to dig deeper into the darkness aspect when it's needed, and then going deeper into the light aspect when it's needed.
Householders is a production of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Silent Thunder Order. Find us on the web at aszc.org.
Our Sangha depends on your support. You can donate by PayPal to donate at storder.org. Gasho.